Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into what's arguably one of the most high-stakes fixtures in English football.
Absolutely. The championship playoff final.
Yeah, that single match deciding the final Premier League spot for 2025-26, often called the richest game in football, right?
It really is. And this year, well, it's a showdown between Sheffield United and Sunderland.
Two big clubs. Sheffield United got past Bristol City in the semis.
And Sunderland, they edged out Coventry City. It was a pretty tight one, actually.
So the winner joins Leeds United and Burnley up in the top flight next season.
That's the prize. Huge.
And to help us navigate this this whole encounter, we're looking at an analysis from Opta Analyst. They've really dug into the key data, the background for this specific game.
Yeah, it's not just, gut feeling or recent headlines. It's about what the underlying numbers, the history, might tell us.
Exactly. So our mission here in this deep dive is to take that analysis, look at everything season performance, playing styles, history in these big games, and try to, well, figure out what the data suggests. Who might have the edge?
It gives us a solid framework for, analysis and a bit of debate before the final kicks off.
Right. So let's get straight into those core numbers from the regular season, because the first thing that really jumps out is that massive points difference.
Huge difference. Sheffield United finished a full 14 points ahead of Sunderland.
14 points.
And what the Opta analysis highlights is that this is actually the biggest points difference between two playoff finalists in the current format. We're talking going back to, 1988-89.
Wow. That really underlines just how strong Sheffield United were over the full 46 games, doesn't it?
Strong is, maybe an understatement. They hit 90 points.
90.
And the analysis notes they're only the third team in second-tier history to get that many points and not go up automatically.
That statistic alone tells you they had an exceptional season by almost any measure, and yet here they are in the final.
And, looking at that automatic promotion race, Leeds and Burnley eventually pulled away, but Sheffield United, they were right in the mix for long spells.
How long does it say?
Yeah, 143 days they spent in those automatic spots. Compare that to Leeds' 156. Interestingly, Burnley only had 88 days up there.
And Sunderland?
Sunderland actually spent more days in the top two than Burnley did 100 days, but that was earlier in the season, mostly.
Right, but for just being consistently in the playoff picture, Sunderland were the team, weren't they?
Definitely. They spent 266 days in the top six. That's the most of any side in the division.
Okay, so you've got Sheffield United, statistically dominant, knocking on the automatic door, versus Sunderland, who were just consistently there in the playoff spots.
Yeah.
So that sets up a real debate, doesn't it? How much does that season-long dominance, that points cap, truly matter in a one-off final at Wembley?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Especially when you look at the contradiction the data presents regarding recent form.
Oh, yeah. Sunderland's from just before the playoffs.
Yeah.
It was, well, alarming.
Alarming is the word. The analysis points out they lost their last 5 regular season games.
5 in a row, and scored just 1 goal in that whole run.
1 goal in 5 games. And this isn't just, a bad patch. The data confirms it's the longest run of defeats for any team entering the EFL playoffs, ever, across any tier.
That's quite something.
By any sort of conventional football logic, you'd think that's curtains, right? Terrible momentum going into knockout football. You'd expect them to just crumble.
But they didn't.
No. They went into that semifinal against Coventry, a tough opponent, and they secured a 3-2 aggregate win, got that late header from Dan Ballard in the second leg.
It really challenges that whole form is everything idea.
Yeah.
It suggests they somehow managed to just, flip a switch when it really mattered.
Exactly. Yeah. So the question for analysis is, was that 5-game slump just statistical noise, totally wiped out by 2 decent semifinal legs?
Or does it hint at some underlying fragility that could pop up again under the pressure of Wembley? That's a huge point for forecasting this game.
And the analysis also flags up their penalty record, which isn't great. Yeah, missed 4 out of 5 penalties in the regular season. Something to keep in mind if this thing goes all the way to a shootout. A definite vulnerability there.
Okay, good point. What about playing styles then? What kind of game can we expect based on the data?
Well, the data suggests neither team are exactly, slow build-up merchants like maybe Leeds or Burnley were at times.
Right, they rank lower in average possession. Sheff Utd 9th, Sunderland 12th, I think it said.
Yeah. But here's where the Opta data gets really interesting, almost weird.
Go on.
Their figures for touches in the opposition box, they're identical, exactly the same across the whole season.
No way. What was the number?
Both hit exactly 1,160 touches in the opponent's box.
That's uncanny.
Isn't it? And what that suggests, when you combine it with their slightly lower possession, is maybe efficiency. They might not keep the ball for ages, but when they get it forward, they get it into dangerous areas.
Makes sense. Does the data back that up with how they attack?
It does. It looks at direct attacks. Opta defines those as sequences starting in your own half, moving mostly towards the opposition goal, and ending in either a shot or a touch inside the box.
Okay, so fast breaks, basically.
Pretty much. And in that metric, Sunderland ranks second in the whole championship's 70 direct attacks. Sheffield United were sixth with 66.
So what that tells us pretty definitively is we should probably expect a fast-paced, direct game.
Yeah, lots of transitions maybe. Unlikely to be a slow, cagey chess match kind of final. Think more end to end.
And that style of play, direct, fast, getting into the box quickly, that often means more fouls, right? More cards.
Usually correlates, yeah. And the data confirms it here, too. Both teams have pretty high card tallies. Sunderland over 100 total cards, Sheff Utd just under.
Any particular players flagged?
Yeah, the analysis names a few. Gustavo Hammer for Sheff Utd got 13 yellows.
Oof.
And then you've got Anela Madhadzit for them, plus Joby Bellingham and Trey Hume for Sunderland, all on 11 cautions.
So that adds another layer, doesn't it? Potential volatility. A key player gets an early booking, or worse.
Exactly. It could really change the flow and the forecast for the match. Discipline will be key.
Another really interesting thing the data points out is the youth factor. Both teams are young.
Very young, especially Sunderland. They've fielded the youngest average starting 11 for the third year in a row. Just under 24 years old on average.
Third year running. Wow.
And Sheffield United weren't far behind. They were the fourth youngest team. So this final is really a showcase for a lot of exciting young talent.
The analysis highlights some specific names, right? Like Chris Rigg at Sunderland.
Yeah, Rigg. He's under 18, and he's played more minutes and made more appearances as a teenager in a championship season than anyone since 2017-18. I think it was 44 games, over 3,000 minutes. Incredible.
And Joby Bellingham, too. Still only 19.
And already in his second straight season playing over 3,500 minutes as a teenager. That hasn't been done since 2014-15, apparently. Huge potential there.
Sunderland also have Eliezer Mayenda hitting form.
Yeah, another young one. Involved in 9 goals in his 13 starts just in 2025. So he's finding form at the perfect time.
And for Sheffield United, they had that injury to Ollie Arblester, didn't they?
They did. ACL back in November, which was a big blow. But it meant 20-year-old City Peck got more chances, made 44 appearances himself.
And the whole Sheffield United squad is pretty young overall.
Yeah, the data says only 3 players aged 30 or over were used all season long.
So all this youth, it brings energy, maybe fearlessness, but also perhaps inexperience in a massive game like this.
It's definitely a key factor to analyze. How will those young players handle the Wembley pressure cooker? It's a massive unknown.
Okay, finally, let's talk history. Omens, specifically Wembley, because the data here paints a pretty stark picture for one team.
It really does. For Sheffield United, the Wembley record is, well, concerning.
Concerning is putting it mildly. They're winless in their last 7 matches there, a draw and 6 losses.
And their last win at Wembley, it was 100 years ago.
100 years. 1925 FA Cup final.
1925.
That's not just like recent history baggage. That's a century-long weight on their shoulders whenever they play at that specific stadium.
And their playoff final history isn't much better, is it?
No. Failed to get promoted in all 4 previous playoff finals they've been in. 3 of those were in the second tier.
The analysis notes they're actually tied for the most playoff final appearances without ever winning promotion via the playoffs.
So the data absolutely raises the question, does that kind of history create a sort of mental block for the players, for the club?
It's a massive point of debate, isn't it? Can a team, can the current group of players just shake off that kind of historical narrative?
What about Sunderland's history in these second-tier finals?
It's a bit mixed. They lost one back in 1990, but actually got promoted anyway because Swindon had issues.
Oh, right. I remember that.
And then there was that famous, absolutely heartbreaking penalty shootout loss to Charlton in 1998. An incredible game.
So not exactly brilliant memories for them either, but maybe not the same weight as Sheff Utd's record.
Perhaps not. And promotion-wise, if Sunderland win this, it'd be their 5th promotion to the Premier League. That would tie the record.
Who holds that? Norwich? West Brom?
Yeah, Norwich, West Brom, Leicester, Burnley, all on 5. Sheffield United wouldn't be far behind, though, historically. It would be their 4th Premier League promotion. Ninth top-flight promotion overall, which puts them quite high up historically.
But just when you think the historical omens are all pointing one way.
Exactly. The Opta data throws in a potential counter-omen, something positive for Sheffield United despite the Wembley woe.
Which is?
Since the championship was rebranded back in 2004-05, the team finishing third in the regular season, which is Sheffield United this year, has actually done better in the playoffs than any other position.
Really? How much better?
They've reached the final more often 16 times, and crucially, they've won promotion via the playoffs more often 9 times, more than 4th, 5th, or 6th place.
Okay, so you got the heavy historical baggage of Wembley and those past final failures for Sheffield United.
Yeah.
Directly contradicted by a modern statistical trend that says, actually, the third-place team is the most likely to win the playoffs.
Precisely. This isn't just conflicting data. It's the very basis for some intense analysis and probably very different forecasts about how this will go.
It absolutely is. The analysis gives us so many fascinating points, and yeah, often conflicting points to chew on.
You've got Sheffield United's huge points tally and that positive trend for third place.
Wade against Sunderland's really poor form run, but then that impressive semi-final recovery.
And Sheffield United's awful history at Wembley itself.
Plus the shared youth factor. The different but direct playing styles promising a fast game, maybe a few cards.
It makes forecasting this match incredibly complex, doesn't it? The data doesn't just hand you a simple answer or a clear favorite when you layer it all together.
No, it really demands deeper analysis. You have to weigh things up.
Exactly. It asks us and you listening to debate which factors actually carry the most weight in a one-off game like this under all that pressure.
Does that sheer regular season consistency, that 14-point gap, eventually tell?
Or can a team genuinely recover from a 5-game losing streak when it matters most?
Does playing at Wembley, with that history, become a psychological factor?
And is that modern trend for the third-place team really predictive or just, a statistical pattern?
So the final thought for you to mull over is this. When you have all these data points, season-long form, recent momentum swings, historical patterns, player profiles, all conflicting so dramatically, which factors do you think will ultimately be decisive? What's going to decide who gets that final coveted spot in the Premier League? Something to analyze and debate as you wait for kickoff.